Commander Lee Jae-ho stood at the main viewing window of the Galactic Defense Force headquarters, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the latest military reports. After 30 years of service, he thought he had seen everything the galaxy could offer. He was wrong. "Commander, you need to see this," said Captain Kim Da-bin, rushing into his office with a data tablet. Her usually calm face showed clear signs of worry. "Our deep space monitors picked up something unusual at the edge of Sector 7. Jae-ho took the tablet, his eyes widening as he read through the data. "A new species. Are you sure about this?" "Yes, sir. They call themselves humans," Da-bin replied, pulling up a series of images on the main screen. "They've just achieved faster-than-light travel, but that's not what concerns us." The screen filled with various images of human military vehicles, weapons, and soldiers. At first glance, nothing seemed particularly remarkable. Their technology was relatively basic compared to most spacefaring races. Their weapons used simple projectile and explosive systems. Their armor was primitive by galactic standards. "I don't understand," Jae-ho said, frowning. "They seem rather ordinary. Why did this report come marked as urgent?" Da-bin pressed a button, and the screen began playing video footage. "Watch this, sir. This is from one of their recent conflicts, before they achieved space travel." The footage showed a group of human soldiers surrounded by enemy forces. By all logical calculations, their situation was hopeless. They were outnumbered, running low on supplies, and had no reinforcements coming. "They should surrender here," Jae-ho commented, applying his military experience, "or at least attempt a tactical retreat." "Keep watching." "Sir." What happened next made Jae-ho's breath catch in his throat. Instead of surrendering or retreating, the humans charged forward. Their faces showed not fear, but determination. They fought with increasing intensity, their movements becoming more aggressive rather than desperate. "This defies all known combat logic," Jae-ho muttered, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. When faced with certain defeat, all rational beings either retreat or surrender. It's basic survival instinct. "There's more, sir," Da-bin said quietly, changing to another video. This one showed a lone human soldier, injured and cornered. Instead of accepting defeat, the soldier fought back with such ferocity that their attackers actually retreated. Jae-ho spent the next hour reviewing similar footage. Each video showed the same pattern. Humans fighting harder when their situation became worse, not easier. It went against everything he knew about warfare. "Have you shared this with High Command?" he asked, finally looking up from the screens. "Not yet, sir. We wanted your assessment first." Jae-ho walked back to the viewing window, his reflection showing the concern on his face. "In all my years of service, I've never seen anything like this. Every species we've encountered follows the same basic principles of warfare. They fight to win, but retreat when defeat is certain. It's logical. It's survival." He turned back to Da-bin. "But these humans, they don't just ignore the odds. They seem to fight harder when the odds are against them. It's as if the concept of certain defeat doesn't exist in their minds." "What should we do, sir?" "Prepare a full report for High Command," Jae-ho ordered, his voice grave. "Mark it as highest priority." And Da-bin, "Yes, sir. Include a personal note from me. Tell them that if we ever face these humans in combat, our traditional military doctrine may not be enough. We're dealing with something we've never seen before, a species that becomes more dangerous, not less, when they're losing." As Da-bin left his office, Jae-ho turned back to the footage, watching again as the human soldiers fought with impossible determination. For the first time in his military career, he felt a chill run down his spine. They had discovered something truly terrifying, an enemy that didn't know how to give up. Kite adjusted his viewing screen for the 10th time that day. As the Galactic Defense Force's leading military anthropologist, he had studied countless species and their warfare tactics. But humans were different. After 3 weeks of analyzing their combat footage, he still struggled to understand them. "Dr. Kita," Your report is overdue, said Director Park Jin-woo, entering the research chamber. The council needs your initial findings. Keita looked up from his screen, his eyes tired from endless hours of study. Director Park, I need more time. What I'm seeing, it doesn't make sense. Explain, Jin-woo ordered, pulling up a chair. Keita played a sequence of videos on the main display. Look at these battles from human history. This one is from what they called World War II. The defending forces are completely surrounded. Their supplies are gone. They have no chance of victory. Then they surrendered, Jin-woo stated, as if it were obvious. No, Keita replied, shaking his head. They fought for another week, with no food, no ammunition. They used broken weapons as clubs. They fought with their bare hands when everything else was gone. Jin-woo frowned. That's impossible. No rational species would waste resources like that. Exactly. Keita switched to another video. And here's something even stranger. In every battle I studied, human combat effectiveness increases as their situation gets worse. They fight harder when they're losing, not easier. That cannot be correct, Jin-woo argued. Check your data again. Keita pulled up his research charts. I've analyzed thousands of human battles. The pattern is clear. When victory is certain, they fight normally. When victory is unlikely, they fight harder. When victory is impossible, he paused, struggling to find the right words. What happens then? Jin-woo asked, leaning forward. They fight the hardest of all. It's as if the concept of impossible doesn't exist in their minds. They simply refuse to accept defeat. Jin-woo stood up and paced the room. Have you shared these findings with anyone else? No, Keita answered. I wanted to be certain first, but after weeks of study, I'm more confused than when I started. Their behavior breaks every rule of warfare we know. He played one final video. A small group of humans defending a position against overwhelming odds. Watch their faces, Director. Do you see any fear? Any sign of retreat? They're smiling. Actually smiling as they face certain death. Jin-woo watched in silence, his professional composure cracking slightly. Write your report, Dr. Keita. But keep your conclusions conservative. The council might not be ready to hear this. With respect, Director, we need to understand this now. Keita insisted. If we ever face humans in combat, our standard tactics won't work. Overwhelming force won't frighten them. It will only make them fight harder. You sound worried, Doctor. Keita gestured at his screens full of battle footage. In all my years studying warfare, I've never seen anything like this. Every species we know fights to win. But humans fight hardest when winning is impossible. They don't just reject defeat. They seem to draw strength from it. After Jin-woo left, Keita returned to his research. As he watched more footage of human battles, he couldn't shake a growing feeling of unease. The galaxy had encountered many dangerous species before, but humans were different. They weren't just fierce or strong or technically advanced. They were something far more dangerous, a species that became stronger in defeat, more determined in failure, and most deadly when all hope seemed lost. As he began writing his report, Keita wondered if the council would understand what they were dealing with. Some truths were too frightening to accept easily. Captain Park Hye-rin stood on the bridge of her ship, the Earth defense vessel Resilient, as enemy warships appeared on the radar. What had started as a routine patrol near the colony on New Haven had turned into their first real combat situation with alien forces. 5 enemy vessels detected, Captain, reported Lieutenant Kang on tactical systems. They're significantly larger than our ship. Hye-rin studied the tactical display. The alien ships had appeared without warning, their intentions clear as they moved to surround the Resilient. Their weapons were already charged. Open communications, Hye-rin ordered. The alien commander's image appeared on screen, tall and imposing with gray-blue skin. Human vessel. The alien spoke through the translator. You have entered restricted space. Surrender your ship or be destroyed. You have no chance of victory. Hai-Ren looked at her crew. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but she saw no fear in their eyes, only determination. This is Captain Park Hai-Ren of the EDV Resilient. We are in Earth-claimed space protecting our colony. We will not surrender. The alien commander looked confused. Your ship's capabilities are inferior. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Surrender is the only logical choice. No, Hai-Ren replied simply. Tactical, target the lid ship. All weapons. The alien commander's confusion turned to disbelief. You cannot win this battle. Why do you choose destruction? Because this is our home, Hai-Ren answered. And humans don't give up their homes. All batteries, fire. The Resilient's weapons blazed to life, striking the alien vessel's shields. As expected, they did little damage. The alien ships returned fire, their superior weapons hammering the Resilient's defenses. Shields at 60%, Kang reported. 50%. 40%. Maintain fire, Hai-Ren ordered. Engineering. Divert all non-essential power to weapons. Keep firing. The alien commander watched in growing confusion as the human ship pressed its attack despite taking heavy damage. Your shields are failing. Your weapons are ineffective. Why do you continue? Because we're human, Hai-Ren answered, gripping her command chair as another blast rocked the ship. And we don't know how to give up. Shields at 20%, Kang announced. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. The alien ships pressed their advantage, expecting the humans to retreat or surrender. Instead, the Resilient charged forward, targeting the lid ship with everything it had. Emergency power to forward shields, Hai-Ren commanded. Set collision course. The alien commander's eyes widened. You would destroy your own ship. This is madness. This is humanity, Hai-Ren corrected him. And you're about to learn why you should have studied our history better. The Resilient, burning and damaged, accelerated toward the alien flagship. At the last moment, Hai-Ren ordered all remaining power diverted to weapons. The concentrated fire, combined with their suicidal charge, finally overwhelmed one section of the alien ship's shields. The alien formation broke, their ships scattering in confusion. They had never encountered a species that fought harder as their situation got worse, or one that would risk complete destruction rather than accept defeat. Enemy ships are retreating, Captain, Kang reported, amazement in his voice. Hai-Ren nodded, watching the alien vessels disappear into hyperspace. Send a message to command. Tell them we've had our first engagement, and tell them the aliens reacted exactly as our analysts predicted. They don't understand how humans fight. As her crew began emergency repairs, Hai-Ren thought about the alien commander's confusion. He had expected them to be rational, to surrender when defeat seemed certain. Instead, he had learned what so many others throughout human history had learned, that humans are most dangerous when victory seems impossible, and that sometimes the most terrifying weapon isn't technology or numbers, but the simple human refusal to accept defeat. Military strategist Du Young stood before the Galactic Defense Council, her presentation ready. The room was filled with the highest-ranking military officials from across the galaxy. They had gathered to discuss the recent encounter with the human vessel. Distinguished members of the council, Du Young began. I have analyzed the battle data from our recent engagement with the human ship Resilient. My findings are concerning. She displayed the battle footage on the main screen. The council members watched as the damaged human vessel charged their ships instead of retreating. As you can see, the humans violated every principle of force preservation, Du Young explained. When their shields were failing and their weapons proved ineffective, they should have surrendered. Instead, they increased their aggressive actions. Admiral Yun, the head of the council, leaned forward. Perhaps this was an isolated incident, one captain's poor judgment. No, Admiral, Du Young replied. She showed more footage, this time from Earth's historical archives. I have studied 1,000 years of human military history. This behavior is consistent across their entire species. The room grew quiet as Do Young displayed her data charts. In standard combat scenarios, all known species follow a predictable pattern. As their chances of victory decrease, their aggression levels drop. They seek to preserve their forces through tactical retreat or surrender. She switched to a new chart. But humans show the opposite pattern. As their situation becomes more desperate, their combat effectiveness increases. They fight harder when losing than when winning. Impossible, one council member declared. No species would waste resources fighting unwinnable battles. Humans do, Du Young stated firmly. And this makes our traditional military doctrine dangerously ineffective against them. She played the recording from the recent battle. Our commander followed standard protocol. He demonstrated superior force and offered surrender terms. With any other species, this would have ended the conflict quickly. The council watched as the human ship, despite heavy damage, continued its attack with increasing intensity. Our forces retreated because they encountered something they had never seen before, Du Young continued. A species that becomes more dangerous, not less, when faced with certain defeat. Admiral Yun studied the data carefully. What are your recommendations, strategist Du Young? First, we must understand that our current military doctrine is based on a false assumption. We believe that overwhelming force leads to surrender. With humans, overwhelming force appears to trigger an opposite response. Do Young displayed her final analysis. Second, we must accept that humans do not calculate victory and defeat the same way we do. They continue fighting long past the point where defeat is mathematically certain. How do we fight an enemy that doesn't follow logical battle principles? Another council member asked. That is the crucial question, Du Young replied. Our standard tactics not only fail against humans, they make them more dangerous. The more we escalate force, the harder they fight. She concluded her presentation with a simple statement. We must completely rethink our approach to warfare. Because in humans, we have encountered something unprecedented. A species that draws strength from defeat, courage from despair, and fighting spirit from impossible odds. As the council began their discussions, Du Young gathered her data. She had delivered the facts, but she wondered if they truly understood the implications. They had discovered a species that defied the universal constants of warfare, and their entire military strategy would need to change as a result. The most terrifying aspect of human armies wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their fundamental inability to accept defeat, a trait that made them more dangerous the closer they came to losing. As Du Young left the council chamber, she wondered if the galaxy was ready for this new reality. Lieutenant Han Jae-won crouched behind the remains of a defensive wall on Colony Outpost 7. The alien force had attacked without warning, overwhelming the colony's outer defenses. Now, only Ji-won's platoon stood between the aliens and the civilian evacuation zone. Status report. Ji-won called through his communication device. The responses came back quickly, each one worse than the last. Beta Squad down to 3 soldiers, sir. Delta Squad lost contact. Alpha Squad holding, but ammunition critical. Ji-won looked at his tactical display. His platoon of 50 had been reduced to 12 active soldiers. The alien battalion numbered over 500, with superior weapons and armor. The math was simple. They could not win this fight. Lieutenant, his second-in-command, Sergeant Ba, spoke quietly. Evacuation needs 10 more minutes to complete. We don't have enough ammunition to last 2. Ji-won nodded, understanding the situation perfectly. Then we'll have to last without ammunition. The alien commander's voice boomed across the battlefield. Human forces, you have fought well, but you have lost. Surrender now, and we will spare your lives. Ji-won looked at his remaining soldiers. Despite their injuries and exhaustion, he saw no defeat in their eyes. All units, listen carefully. When we run out of ammunition, we use our combat knives. When those break, we use our hands. We hold this line. Sir, One young soldier spoke up. "Those are impossible odds." "Exactly," Jai-1 replied with a small smile. "And that's when humans fight best." The alien forces advanced, expecting the humans to retreat or surrender. Instead, Jai-1's soldiers met them with increasingly fierce resistance. When their guns ran empty, they fought with knives. When their knives broke, they fought with pieces of debris and their bare hands. The aliens couldn't understand it. Every time they destroyed one defensive position, the humans simply reformed at another, fighting with even greater intensity. The fewer humans remained, the harder they fought. "This defies all logic," the alien commander muttered, watching through his view-screen. "They've lost 80% of their forces. Why do they fight harder now than when they were at full strength?" Jai-1 led from the front, his voice encouraging his troops even as their numbers dwindled. "Every second we hold is another civilian saved. We are humanity's line in the sand. We do not break." The aliens pressed their attack, but something strange began to happen. Their troops, despite their superior numbers and equipment, started to hesitate. They had never encountered an enemy that grew more dangerous as they got closer to defeat. "Sir," Sergeant Ba called out, "evacuation complete. All civilians clear." Jai-1 nodded, blood running down his face from a wound he didn't remember receiving. "Send word to command. Tell them Colony Outpost 7 civilians are safe. Tell them the line held." When reinforcements finally arrived hours later, they found a scene that would become legendary in both human and alien military academies. 12 human soldiers, badly wounded but still fighting, had held off an entire alien battalion. The cost had been enormous, but they had achieved their objective. The alien commander would later write in his report, "We did not lose to superior numbers or technology. We lost because we encountered something our military doctrine cannot counter, an enemy that draws strength from certain defeat, that fights hardest when victory is impossible, and that simply refuses to break, no matter the cost." Jai-1's last words before losing consciousness were simple: "We held the line. Because that's what humans do." Military anthropologist Kita sat in his darkened office, surrounded by holographic displays showing battle footage from the recent conflicts with humans. After months of study, he had finally understood what made humans different. The answer was both simple and frightening. Director Park Jin-woo entered the office, noting the tired look on Kita's face. "You called for an urgent meeting, Doctor. Have you made a breakthrough?" Kita nodded slowly. "I have identified what makes humans unique in warfare. The answer was in front of us all along, but we couldn't see it because we were looking at the wrong thing." He gestured to the displays showing various human battles, including the recent defense of Colony Outpost 7. "We kept focusing on their tactics, their weapons, their physical capabilities. But those aren't what make humans dangerous." "Then what does?" Jin-woo asked, taking the seat. Kite touched a control, bringing up footage of Lieutenant Han Ji-won's last stand. "It's hope. Humans have an unshakable ability to hope, even in hopeless situations." Jin-woo frowned. "Hope? That seems like a weakness in warfare, not a strength." "That's what makes it so dangerous," Kite explained. "Every other species in the galaxy bases their military decisions on mathematical probability. When defeat becomes certain, they retreat or surrender. It's logical. It's efficient. It preserves resources." He played more footage, showing human soldiers fighting with increasing intensity as their situation worsened. But humans don't think that way. They can look at a situation where victory is mathematically impossible and still believe they might win. "That's irrational," Jin-woo stated. "Exactly. And that's what makes them so terrifying." Kita stood up and began pacing. "When we face defeat, we calculate the odds and make logical decisions. When humans face defeat, they hope. They believe. And that belief gives them strength that defies all military logic." He showed the data from Colony Outpost 7. 12 soldiers against 500. No ammunition, no reinforcements. By any rational calculation, they had zero chance of success. But they didn't surrender, because they hoped. Hope cannot change military reality, Jinwu argued. But it changes how humans face that reality, Kita countered. They don't fight harder because they're stronger or braver. They fight harder because they believe they might win, even when every fact says they can't. Keita displayed his final analysis. That's why our traditional tactics fail against them. We try to break their will by showing them defeat is certain. But humans don't accept certainty. They hope. They believe. And as long as they can believe, they can fight. Jinwu sat in silence for a long moment. If this is true, how do we fight an enemy that doesn't accept impossible odds? That's just it, Kite replied quietly. We can't. Our entire military doctrine is based on forcing enemies to face reality. But humans have this extraordinary ability to reject reality in favor of hope. And somehow, sometimes, that hope lets them achieve the impossible. As Jinwu left the office, Kita turned back to his displays. He had finally understood the most terrifying aspect of human armies. It wasn't their weapons or their numbers or their tactics. It was their fundamental ability to hope in hopeless situations, to believe in impossible victories, and to fight hardest when all logic said they should surrender. That simple truth would change the galaxy's approach to warfare forever. Commander Yun Minji walked into the Grand Strategy Chamber of the Galactic Defense Force. The room was filled with the highest-ranking military commanders from across the galaxy. They had gathered to address the human problem. Our traditional military doctrine has failed. Minji began, her voice clear and firm. Every tactic we have used against humans has not only failed but made them fight harder. She displayed the battle data from multiple engagements with human forces. The evidence was clear and troubling. Each time the galactic forces had increased their military pressure, the humans had responded with greater resistance. We have always believed that overwhelming force leads to surrender, Minji continued. This principle has worked with every species we have encountered, except humans. With humans, overwhelming force makes them more dangerous. Admiral Yun raised his hand. Commander Yun, are you suggesting we abandon our core military principles? Yes, Admiral, because they don't work against humans. Let me show you why. Minji played the footage from Colony Outpost 7. We sent 500 troops against 12 humans. By our calculations, the humans had zero chance of victory. Yet they held their position for hours, fighting with bare hands when their weapons were gone. The room grew quiet as they watched the footage. This is not an isolated incident, Minji explained. Every time we corner humans, every time we show them defeat is certain, they fight harder. Our traditional tactics are making our enemies stronger, not weaker. She brought up new tactical displays. We must completely change how we approach conflict with humans. Everything we know about warfare is based on the assumption that enemies will surrender when defeat is certain. Humans break this rule. They reject certainty. They fight hardest when victory is impossible. What do you propose? Another commander asked. Minji displayed her new tactical doctrine. First, we must stop using overwhelming force against humans. It doesn't frighten them. It motivates them. Second, we must understand that pushing humans into desperate situations makes them more dangerous, not less. She showed analysis from recent battles. When we surround humans, they don't surrender. They break out. When we destroy their supplies, they don't retreat. They charge forward. When we show them defeat is certain, they fight harder than ever. This defies all military logic, Admiral Yun stated. Yes, it does, Minji agreed. And that's why we're losing. We keep trying to use logic against an enemy that draws strength from defying logic. She displayed her final recommendations. We must develop new tactics that don't rely on forcing surrender through superior force. We must avoid pushing humans into desperate situations. Most importantly, we must accept that the traditional rules of warfare don't apply to this species. The chamber erupted in discussion. Centuries of military doctrine were being challenged. Everything they knew about warfare was being questioned. "There's one more thing," Minji added, silencing the room. "In all our years of warfare, we have never encountered a species that becomes stronger in defeat. We have never faced an enemy that fights harder when victory is impossible. Until now." As the commanders debated her findings, Minji thought about the implications. The galaxy's approach to warfare would have to change completely, because they had discovered something unprecedented. An enemy that couldn't be defeated by traditional means, a species that drew strength from certain defeat, and an army that fought hardest when all hope seemed lost. The most terrifying aspect of human armies wasn't their weapons or tactics. It was their ability to deny reality itself, to fight harder when victory was impossible, and to achieve the impossible through sheer refusal to accept defeat. Senior diplomat Song Da-hyun stood before the combined assembly of the Galactic Council and Earth's representatives. The Grand Chamber was silent as he prepared to speak. After months of conflict and analysis, both sides had agreed to peace talks. "Distinguished representatives," Da-hyun began, "we are gathered here to prevent further conflict between our civilizations. Recent events have taught us important lessons about each other." He gestured to the human delegation, led by Ambassador Lee. Their faces showed neither fear nor arrogance, just quiet determination, the same determination that had made them such fearsome opponents. "Our initial encounters with humanity were based on misunderstanding," Da-hyun continued. "We believed that superior force would lead to quick resolution of conflicts. We were wrong." The chamber's displays showed footage from various battles, including the legendary defense of Colony Outpost 7. "We discovered that humans do not follow the universal constants of warfare. When faced with overwhelming force, they do not surrender. When defeat seems certain, they fight harder." Ambassador Lee nodded slowly. "We have always been this way. Throughout our history, some of our greatest victories came from battles that seemed impossible to win." Da-hyun displayed the analysis from Kita and Commander Yoon. "Our military experts have concluded that traditional warfare cannot succeed against humans. The more force we use, the stronger their resistance becomes. The more desperate their situation, the harder they fight." He turned to address both delegations. "This leaves us with a clear choice. We can continue a conflict that will become increasingly costly for both sides, or we can choose alliance over warfare." The Galactic Council members shifted uncomfortably. They had never before suggested alliance with a species they had initially tried to dominate. But humans had proven different from any species they had encountered. "Humanity offers unique strengths to our galactic community," Da-hyun explained. "They possess an extraordinary ability, the power to hope when hope seems impossible, to fight on when defeat seems certain, to achieve victory through sheer determination and refusal to surrender." Ambassador Lee stood to address the assembly. "We do not seek conflict, but we will never accept defeat when our homes, our families, or our allies are threatened. This is not a choice for us. It is who we are." Da-hyun nodded in agreement. "And that is why we propose full alliance status for Earth and its colonies. Better to have humanity's determination fighting alongside us than against us." The assembly chamber filled with discussion as both sides considered the proposal. The Galactic Council members remembered their military reports, how human forces became stronger in defeat, how their traditional tactics had failed, how a single platoon had held off a battalion through sheer refusal to surrender. Finally, the Council voted. The decision was unanimous. Earth would join the Galactic Alliance as a full member. As Da-hyun and Ambassador Lee signed the formal agreement, both sides understood the deeper truth. The galaxy had discovered something unprecedented, a species that defied the normal rules of warfare, that drew strength from adversity, and that achieved the impossible through pure determination. The most terrifying aspect of human armies had become their greatest diplomatic asset, because in a galaxy full of threats, who wouldn't want allies who fought hardest when victory seemed impossible, who grew stronger in defeat, and who simply refused to give up? no matter the odds. The agreement marked a new chapter in galactic history, and it began with a simple recognition that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or numbers or tactics. Sometimes it's the simple human ability to hope against hope, to fight against impossible odds, and to snatch victory from the jaws of certain defeat.